This was one of our art students last year, and she just basically did a portrait of Don Bosco.
Może to i dobrze, może to wszystko Pan Bóg już tak prowadzi. Then these were some of the magazines that were
They were great workers and great educators, and they managed to combine the two, and they passed on to their students a spirit of hard work, generosity, but also commitment to the religious life. They were very faithful in prayer. They were an example to all of us.
My encounter with the Salesians, the priests, the way they live their life has been transforming. For me, myself, my point in life of discernment and questioning that has formed the bonds and ties and the way that I live my life for the rest of my life, I think. Their way of reaching out those who are poor in spirit, poor in life.
Prayers were part and parcel of the life, and that was always brought to their attention. And even pupils, past pupils, 50, 60 years later, would still quote what they learned in the church, in the classroom.
Our identity as Salesians comes first in some way, so therefore it's not so much Irish Salesians, but Salesians living in Ireland. I know it might sound like a bit of a philosophical distinction, but I think it's very true.
This is the original house where the Salesians came in 1919. There was a film made in the 1940s, and it began with this phrase, very profound voice. In 1919, the Salesians first sailed up the Shannon into Limerick, which sounds very romantic, but it wasn't true. They didn't sail up the Shannon. However, it fixes two things. It fixes the date, 1919, and the fact that the work started here in Limerick. And the Salesians came to Limerick at the invitation of Bishop Hallinan. Bishop Hallinan had been a student and I think also a professor in the Irish College in Rome.
He personally wanted to be a Salesian, and he was over in Italy, knew Don Bosco. We have letters where Don Bosco wrote to him and a companion of his, Liston, when they were studying in Rome. And they knew what Don Bosco was doing for young people.
Without his invitation, we probably would not have got in. You can't come in to a diocese without the invitation of the bishop. And it was providential that he knew Don Bosco.
Dennis Hallinan was very much aware of what the Salesians could bring, and he in fact was the man who blessed Pallaskenry when it opened in July of 1920, after they'd prepared the place and got it up and running.
And there is correspondence between Bishop Hallinan and Don Bosco in the biographical memoirs. A few letters there, and we have a few other letters also, I think. And the tradition that we heard was that Bishop Hallinan wanted to become a Salesian, but Don Bosco said, no, you go to your own country and you have something important for me to do there. And he was the one who invited the Salesians to Ireland. That is not documented, so it may be only a pious tradition. As the Italians say, se non è vero, è ben trovato. It may not be true, but it's a good story.
Yes. What you have here is, this is the important document. This is actually the original letter of appointment of Father Sutherland by Father Paul Albera as rector of the House of Limerick, as it was called, on the date of the 24th of April 1920.
The big work that they did in Ireland was for farmers, the agricultural colleges. Agriculture was looked down upon until the Salesians came. The Salesians made it practical, made it attractive for young people.
Almost immediately, the Salesians realised that those first Salesians, led by Father Sutherland, Father McCourt and others, realised that the need in Ireland at that time was not for commercial education but for an agricultural college. And so already in July of 1920 there was the official opening of the agricultural college, which is still flourishing. It's flourishing more than ever now.
An awful long way from what was a small farm to a big farm, starting with 19 or 20 students to over 700 students, so it has grown enormously. We play a very significant role. We've over 700 students currently studying agriculture in various formats, and those students, a lot of those students are coming from smaller farms, so technology is hugely important. What we're trying to do is give these students the skills to either work on their own farms more profitably or to work in the agricultural industry in Ireland.
The charism of Don Bosco will always be relevant and alive. It is to draw attention to, particularly to the needs of young people, particularly those on the margins, whether it's economically, culturally, religiously, or any of those lines. There will be a very big role.
A quarter of the economy is agriculture in Ireland. It's hugely important, and the Salesians are known there. In fact, Warrenstown has a great name, and in fact the past pupils themselves recently produced a big volume about their memories of the Salesians. You could actually write the biography of a lot of the Salesians by piecing together the different witnesses that people gave about the Salesians they met in Warrenstown.
Is that the way the sat-nav directs you?
I put it like that it will, but it is not showing me that it is the shortest way, but it is...
It is the short, I know it, that it is, because
That's okay.
it's measured, it's at least 3 to 4 miles shorter.
So we go this way.
About 4 kilometers shorter. I commenced teaching in '58, so I was from 1958 to 2001. That's the span. I still have students coming visiting and talking about the times that they spent in Warrenstown. It was a very pleasant environment. Most people you talk to will attest to the fact that they were very content during their stay in Warrenstown. There was a very good atmosphere. People got on well together. People worked well together. Conditions were very good. People were hard working.
The work of the Salesian brothers in Warrenstown. They were great workers and great educators, and they managed to combine the two, and they passed on to their students a spirit of hard work, generosity, but also a commitment to the religious life. They were very faithful in prayer. They were an example to all of us. They were the ones, more than others, who built up Warrenstown in particular.
And we know that from past students coming back and testifying to the fact that they gained a lot and that they were happy when they were there. Many will tell you that it was sometimes the best year in their life or one of the best years in their lives. So obviously when they were interested and enjoyed the subject, well, then it was easy to cater for their needs. I I never had any intention of becoming a priest. I never had any intention of joining a religious order. I just simply wanted to be a Salesian, that I saw the people in Warrenstown. And I thought they were living a very good life. And I said, why not follow this type of life? The Salesians accepted me, and that was that.
That's it. 9, 8, 7, 6.
We were conscious of following the system laid down by St. Don Bosco. You didn't stand guard over them, you worked with them. When we were working with the students, not just standing as supervisors, but actually doing the work with them, even though it might be in a winter's day, it could be hard work, quite hard work. But if the people in charge were willing to do that hard work themselves, then the students would follow on. So you led by example, and you were conscious of that. This man was the brains behind it, Father Collins. Brother Riley was an engineer. This man was the farm manager who worked very closely with Father Collins. He was farm manager in Warrenstown.
42, I think. The first one was Father Michael McGinty, who died in 1949. The second one, I think, was Father Fahy, who died in 1953, 1 year after I came here. Father Aloysius Sutherland, the first rector. Father Patrick Horgan, missionary in Chile, doctor of philosophy. Father Cornelius Gray was very well known throughout the country because he was one of those, or two or three, Father Gray and Father Breen, who travelled around the country, meeting our benefactors, making Don Bosco known, showing the film of Don Bosco, and so on. Connie Gray, his brother Eddie Gray, died in South Africa, was a missionary for a long, long time. In the 1960s, the late 1960s, there were almost 300 Irish Salesians, and they were divided almost exactly into three groups. Roughly 90 in Ireland, 90 in Britain, and another 90 scattered all over the world. Australia, China, India, South America, North America. They were everywhere. Now we're fewer than 60.
I wanted to work for young people, and so that's why I came to the Salesians. The provincial said to me, would I go to South Africa? And I said, sure. So I went to South Africa. It was a big change. We went on the ship. I didn't like that, but they meant it to be a holiday for us.
A lot of our first Salesians went to India, and of course others went to China. And very few went to South America from Ireland. I knew 5 only, and they all went to the same province, the Amazon province, only 5 of them. There were 10 Salesian mission stations along the river and on its tributaries. So I ended up, my first mission was on the border between Colombia and Venezuela. Traveling on the rivers is very difficult. You have to be strong and you have to be healthy, you know, to try and keep up that kind of work, you know. I was the only one in this particular mission in Isana for 7 years, and I was the only priest. I had a brother with me, so I had to do all the traveling on the rivers. And that was, you know, you have, it's very hard work. You work for 7 weeks, and you're carrying over 200 litres of petrol for your outboard motor, because there's no filling stations along the way. You have to carry everything with you. And then when it comes to rapids, you have to carry them over the rocks, empty the boat, pull the boat through, and try and get help, native help to get sometimes, because it's so difficult, some of the rapids. And of course, the danger was you could even overturn, you could even lose your life, you know. All our missions there were supported by donations from Ireland.
It is highly significant both inside Ireland and outside. Inside Ireland because it's the missions office that maintains contact with our benefactors, promotes the novena, the annual novena to St. Don Bosco and Mary Help of Christians, distributes the Salesian bulletin and the calendar. It's through the work of the benefactors, the generosity of the benefactors, that we are able to offer help to the missions.
We went out to people, the Irish people, all over the world actually, and then we need them back here. We need people coming into us now, to try and re-evangelize, revive the faith here in Ireland, which is still there, very much so I think, but then we need to get people to revive it, for young people especially. It's more difficult in the sense that there you were, I suppose it's kind of called it pre-evangelization. You know, they hadn't the faith for long, and you were encouraging. But here, over here, they had the faith and they're losing it, and to come here and try and re-establish it and re-evangelize, I say, it's more difficult. Yeah, there's an indifference really. That is a problem here. There's an indifference to the faith, especially among young people, and a lot of them have almost lost the faith.
I think, I suppose, Bishop Fulton Sheen once said, the more you are, the more prayer life you have, the greater stamina you have. That's what I think. It comes from in prayer, you know. He said the more you're closer to God, the more stamina you have. I don't know. That's
The camps began perhaps in the 50s or 60s. Certainly they were flourishing in the 60s. And the original idea was for young people from Dublin to give them a chance of a holiday.
For me, one of the things was the relationship was good, and that helped. Like they'd see the priests and the brothers, you know, in praying, their own example of their dedicated life. There would have been obviously religion classes and things like that, but religion is that it's something caught rather than taught. You know, it's what they see and what they they're convinced that, okay, that person believes in that, and at least it becomes a question for them, well, what do I believe as well? I fell in love with what I saw because the priests and the brothers there, following Don Bosco's preventive system, joined in the games with us, and we had a terrific time. We went there for 10 days, and in that time we forgot we even had a home to go to. It was so good.
Then it expanded to other areas, and particularly in the 70s, when we had a lot of our students here in Ireland during the summer months, when they were not engaged in studies, they organised camps here and in Ballynakill and in Warrenstown, initially for boys from Dublin. But then during the time of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, many young people from the north came to avail of these summer camps.
Because here in the holiday camp, the Salesians were playing with the youngsters, and it was a marvellous experience. That one there is the first camp. That's Father Charles Archer with a group of boys in Warrenstown. And that would go back to the 1940s. You can see on the faces how happy they were.
There was great joy and excitement in 1969 when it was decided that we would have our own Irish province. The Salesians came here precisely 100 years ago. So we have 100 years of history of Salesians in Ireland. So the new Irish province brought a sense of enthusiasm. In 1972, the new student house in Maynooth was opened. 77, a house for homeless youngsters in Gardiner Street in Dublin. And then in the early 80s, 81 I think, the school in Selbridge.
Young people generally are very helpful and very open and very willing to help out in loads of ways like that, particularly in the school here. We have the different senior groups that are involved in junior leadership, and they are more than agreeable to help and be available and to do whatever they can in any way. There's an optimism around that in terms of what we could hope to achieve over the years. I had gone to a Salesian school myself in early years, and that probably was the main reason why I wanted to be a Salesian. And I spent my whole life working in school.
Good afternoon, teachers and gentlemen and students. Can I ask you all now to make your way into the hall? All students to the hall, please. We're about to make our presentations for the winners of the annual road race. So I can ask you to all make your way to the hall, and once you're in the hall, we're going to ask you to take a seat and to sit down on the floor. So all students who are outside, our guests, parents, and we ask you all now to make your way into the hall, please. We're about to start our presentations. Thank you.
Our first group of boys, there were 55 boys involved with 5 staff, and that's a photograph here of the group as they lined up to go into school on that first morning in September. The numbers grew then over the years, and in 1984, June 1984, we transferred from the old school up to this new school here. By that stage we had 250 boys. About 10 years later we were approaching the 700 mark. The staff obviously had grown from around 5 at the beginning to 55 at this stage.
Up to the 1970s, there were quite a number of reports in the newspapers talking about kids being homeless and on the streets, particularly boys, getting into trouble. And we felt that as Salesians we should be responding to that situation.
We've had big influence in terms of caring for teenagers and young adults. I think we were the first to develop a program also for aftercare, those who had gone through care and then at the age of 18 were left to their own devices.
These are young people who've been hurt, and a gentle approach works very well. The Salesian ethos. And thankfully our lay staff are now literally running this service, we're only giving backup and support to it, have bought in to the Salesian ethos. It's wonderful, some of the feedback that we get from the young people who have moved on is quite amazing. I mean, I can look at young people in their late 40s and 50s, early 50s, who are bringing up families that are very loving. That's a key thing, a key thing. They're there now creating their own families. Young people who came to us 12, 13 years of age, and also working gainfully. I mean, we have a number of people who have become teachers, 1 or 2 have become social care workers, people in the different professions. And that's very encouraging.
Waters run on each side.
Our thing is now, certainly in our Salesian world, is to train our lay people in the Salesian system that they will carry on the charism, not only in the classroom but in the whole school environment. That's how we see it being carried on today. When we came in our schools, it was largely Salesian personnel that were in the schools, but those days, it's a different methodology today, if you like, but the goal is the same.
Up till when I was appointed as principal, previous to that it was all Salesian principals. So it was Salesian priests. So I was the first lay principal. But I would call myself a Salesian because I've been nowhere else since I did my leaving cert here in 1977. I went to college in Limerick. I became a physical education teacher and Irish teacher. When I qualified there, I came back here to teach. We have a lot of new staff who have come on board, and they've all really engaged with the Salesian ethos in a very, very strong way.
The Salesian community established itself here in this parish of Sean McDermott Street almost 25 years ago. We experienced a lot of the social issues that you will experience in many inner city parishes: poor education, poor employment prospects, housing. We realised that young people were struggling particularly with drug addiction at a very young age. So as a community we decided that we would try and intervene in some way. So we set up a project called the Crinan Project. I would feel that Don Bosco would be very much at home here. In some way it's a kind of the Valdocco area that he started out his work in.
If we knew that we are really loved infinitely, extraordinarily by God, that He just really loves you as you are, that He just loves you infinitely, that you are His child, you know, I think that would be my special wish for all of us to learn more about, that we are God's special child.
Handing on the faith in Ireland today is not easy because the changes that have happened here have been enormous and have happened very radically. Secularism grew very rapidly and vocations dropped significantly.
Not just for us Salesians in Ireland, it's true for all religious orders in Ireland. There's something dying. There's definitely something dying in the sense that we are not really attracting the vocations that we would have done in the past. So and that has to be faced, it has to be acknowledged. But I believe it's part of the Paschal mystery. You know, it's something dying in order for something else to be born. And this is all part of God's plan.
We can still spread the seed. But then it's not for us to be going away disappointed and say, but they didn't listen to me. We don't know. Do you know what I mean? I don't think we can actually always judge it by how we get on in the day. If we did, I wouldn't be doing this work now. Because some days you find up and just say, what was I doing? What was I doing here today, you know? But you don't know.
And like in the world today, you see, you know, the depression rates and all that are going up, and people are just lonely and lost and don't really know who they are anymore. And I want to be able to bring God to them if I can. That's why I'm here. And praise God that the Salesians are here too to keep me on this journey. Being on campus and just being there for somebody, like if they're down or if they need somebody to talk to, or because like that's what the Salesians are teaching me too. Like they don't push the faith on anyone, but if somebody needs help, they're there. They're an open ear. Like you can come in for a cup of tea and a chat, and they're there. And then if they're asked, like, how are you so happy? How are you so at peace? you know, they say because, you know, I have God in my life.
There's no life without prayer. There's no meaningful life without prayer. I was praying when I was an aspirant in Balnakill. Long before I thought of Africa or anywhere else, I learned they taught us to pray, and we did pray.
It's been great in that way to be here, to meet priests that are energetic and have ideas and motivate you to do more, you know what I mean? I wish them the best. I pray to God that their vocations may continue to grow.
My wishes for the Salesians in Ireland is the same as my wishes for the world and the church. And I'd like to see the Salesians do that in all our houses, that we work with the people and promote dialogue and consensus and love of Christ. And in our catechesis, we got to focus on the person of Christ.
That they never lose sight of Don Bosco's call to them, that they work for young people. There is a temptation today to get involved in big things and be important people. And I'd say don't go down that road. Rather stay working with young people and for young people wherever you find them. And they are there and they are in need.
So what the future is going to be like, I'm not pessimistic about it or that. We won't have the big numbers and all the rest of it, but there'll be quality there and a real challenge, you know, to live your life for Jesus.
The Salesians now, and it's similar in all of Western Europe, the number of Salesians in Western Europe are diminishing.
A lot of us need rejuvenation, refreshing of the spirit, of the vision and that, and to sort of try to reach out, you know, to be in touch with young people, to know what their needs are.
And that is part of what we're trying to understand with the younger Salesians coming in as well, is to how they can begin their work and carry on the Salesian work here in Ireland over the next 100 years.
The number of Salesians in Asia are increasing. We don't know what circumstances are going to be like in 10 years' time. Now, from the Salesian headquarters now in Rome, they're trying to help the Irish province by sending in people from Poland and from Vietnam. And we have, at the moment, we have 3 Polish people and we have 3 Vietnamese.
We're not expecting them to come in and do things like we did. And there has to be an openness on our part that it's going to be different.
Not to try to force them into our narrow ways of doing things, but to allow them to bring their talents and their gifts and their experience of the gospel.
You don't do these things on your own. It's if God doesn't bless you, you can't do the work. So you must remember that at all times you're just an instrument in God's hands. And that's basically, you know, at the root of all these things.
John the 23rd, with the Vatican Council, was worrying about how it was going to go. And he eventually dawned on him at night and he said, "Stop worrying," he said. "The church isn't mine, it's the Lord's." And he's the one that's doing the work.
So, if you like, they're new beginnings, beginning again.
I feel happy because we have a day to remember the Salesian in the past. That's a good thing, and we look back to the past, and we can do something for the future.
The slogan, and I don't know if slogan is the right word, but the slogan that we have designed for our centenary is celebrate the past and create the future. And I think in some ways, to be able to create the future, we can only do that when we truly recognize the past. So as we look back over the journey that has been traveled in the Salesians living in Ireland over the last 100 years, there is so much to be grateful for. So much. And God knows more than us what has flourished. And when we look over the last 100 years at the young people who've gone through our agricultural schools, gone through our secondary schools, our boarding schools, who've been in our Don Bosco care houses, who've gone through universities that we've been chaplains to. When we look at how their lives have been affected because of the Salesian presence in their lives, then there is so much really honestly to be grateful for. People may say that at the moment we're living through difficult times as Salesians. That is true in terms of the diminishment of vocations, in terms of difficulties really within a more secularized society as well too. But you see, even there's a lot to be thankful for, because when we look at a society that's more secular, that's only one way of looking at it. For a person of faith, society is never secular, because God is always present. So it actually gives us the opportunity to look for God, where God is present, and to help other people recognize His presence. But we're only 100 years young. 100 years is very little. For God, 1,000 years is like a day. What we are called to do is to be faithful, and God will make it fruitful. And it is not our mission, it's God's mission. It is God who hears the cry of the poor. He hears their cry, and He chooses, therefore, us to respond to that cry on His behalf. That cry is very much there in our world today. But we need to hear it, because God already hears it, but we need to hear it. So we need to tune into what God is saying to us in order to be able to respond. And if we're tuning into what God is asking of us, He will make it fruitful. As Saint Mother Teresa said, God doesn't ask us to be successful, He asks us to be faithful. And that is true. If we can keep the spark of fire alive in the midst of increasing darkness, then God will fan the flame of that fire, and He will bring about a new Pentecost in response to the need of young people. Of that I am convinced.
Here is a man who found a way to make the stars above our heads seem brighter than a day. He offered hope. He made a family of the young by living freely, spending night and day, giving life away, finding hearts ready to respond. And so we keep this memory of his life, memory filled with joy and goodness, reaching out to everyone, calling us to love, bringing us to God with a message for the world. Here is a man who in his day brought the sun to shine upon the orphan and the stray. His was a home to welcome more than you could say. His living freely, spending night night and day, living life away, finding hearts ready to respond. And so we keep this memory of his life, memory filled with joy and goodness, reaching out to everyone, calling us to love, bringing us to God with a message for the world. Here is a man who came to say that loving God in everyone would brighten every day. Love was his plan, the laughter shining in his eyes, his living freely, spending night and day, giving life away, finding hearts ready to respond. And so we keep this memory of his life, memory filled with joy and goodness, reaching out to everyone, calling us to love, bringing us to God with a message for the world.